make the offer so good that they feel stupid saying no to it. I mean, we've scaled to, we'll do $20 million this year. Next year, we hope to do $100 million. Honestly, the account, I'd say, transformed overnight. And ultimately with him, like everything from day one came down to speed. Hire people that either sell cans or save money. We've had people who don't do either of those things. And ultimately what you end up with is someone who spends money and doesn't make any money. Really, the playbook is spend more money. It's kind of your first step. Your second thing you want to be doing is spending more money efficiently, so getting more new customers per dollar that you spend. And then the third thing is
Matty Martin, head of marketing at Cadence, right? A lot of people probably know what Cadence is now. They've seen the can in the stores, they've seen it somewhere. I'm quite a close friend of yours, and I feel like I stay up to date with Cadence, love Cadence. And I feel like I'm completely out of touch because of how fast you guys are growing. So for anybody that's listening, give us the snapshot of where you guys are right now.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? I mean, we've scaled to, we'll do $20 million this year. Next year, we hope to do $100 million. We're in just over 8,000 stores across the US. In the UK, we're in about, I want to say 1,500 stores-ish. And both channels are growing pretty large. But yeah, aspiration is by next year to hit $100 million run rate. So that's obviously the big goal. I do believe that, a lot of that will be driven by DTC. But yeah, that's kind of where we're up to.
Awesome. So I love to hear it. So let's dive into that. So the 100 million run rate. Plan is to do more D2C. You've obviously got a strategy in place. What's the plan?
Yeah, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the strategy of going super D2C first. Obviously, like I mentioned, we're in quite a lot of doors already. I think that one thing that we found is that, it's quite a lot easier to sell in those doors when you've got 1 million people in your database that you can just email and send to the stores. So, we were really thinking, like, what is the most predictable way that we can get to $100 million where we can pretty much run an equation of money in versus money out, and extremely strong execution to manage that, and pretty much guarantee our path to that point. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to, really the playbook is spend more money as kind of your first step. Your second thing you want to be doing is spending more money efficiently, so getting more new customers per dollar that you spend. And then the third thing is making each customer worth more money and making them worth more money sooner. Because ultimately, in the supplements game, especially, like, where you've got something that can be taken as a daily habit, like, you really make the money on the customer. You don't make the money on the purchase. So yeah, ultimately those three things all kind of tie together as, like, ultimately what you want to be aiming for. And then, there's a multitude of things that kind of sit within that. So for example, introducing more creative diversity into your account, into your Meta account, that's going to enable you to spend more money because you tap into more audiences, hitting a greater TAM. Things like sorting out your conversion rate on your site, building landers around these kind of new audiences that you're building out on Meta, in order to allow you to spend more money more efficiently because you're getting the conversions. And then ultimately, on the making customers worth more money and worth more money sooner, it's really an LTV play. So, what's the fastest way we can get someone to be worth, 3-4x what their first purchase is? And ultimately that comes down to subscription, and then keeping people on subscription as long as possible. There's obviously many other things that really kind of come into that. For example, channel diversification, like influencer to paid flywheel that you get from, organic channels like TikTok, and TikTok Shop obviously being a big part of that now. But ultimately, like, these are main things that you really want to be hitting to scale. So yeah, that's kind of what we're really focusing on, really from now.
And right now, what is the D2C split between D2C and retail?
Yeah, right now we're literally about 50-50, honestly. Realistically, that'll drift probably more towards 80-20 next year. Um, but again, it's something that we see with a lot of these CPG brands nowadays. Like, people look at Bloom Energy as a bit of an overnight success energy drink when realistically they had 10 years of econ behind them that everyone seems to forget about. And like I said, when you can, email a database of 1 million customers and tell them, we've opened up Kroger in Texas, and you've got such a concentrated area, you can just send an email to everyone in Texas and say, hey, instead of buying on the website or Amazon this month, go to the stores and pick up a can. Um, so yeah, it's very deliberate. I think ultimately we got a really great start with the retailers that we've been put into. Obviously, like Walmart and Target being the two big ones in the US, and Holland and Barrett in the UK. Um, we've got a very strong leadership team built around retail. Like obviously Ross's previous business with wholly retail, and then a lot of the leadership that he brought over with him to Cadence as well. Retail is their game. So I guess you could say pressure's on really to build the DTC business over the next year or so.
Yeah, and it must be really hard because again, we've talked about all the subscription offers that you guys offer
Yeah,
and everything to try and get them. I think it's like past month 3.
yeah,
Obviously, on retail, you can't track any of that,
no,
right?
no, yeah, it's really hard, and especially when I mean, we look at Amazon, and the site really is it's two separate channels, but it's all one business. And like, you know, you can look at your spend, and you can look at your CAC on D2C only, and like how much it's costing you to acquire a customer, when you get your money back, all that kind of stuff. But then if you blend that across Amazon, you can get a completely different picture. And I'm sure if you were to blend that again across retail, you know what I mean, you'd get a completely different picture. um, the retail marketing side is very different to D2C. D2C, obviously, you can scale, a brand can scale without having a brand really, with just Meta, and just throw all their dollars into that channel until the dollars best spent really somewhere else. Um, but I mean, with retail, it's so much harder because you've got to, one, get someone to go to a store. Like that's your first way of getting someone to buy in store, which is highly unlikely if they're sat on the couch or doing something. Two, you've got to make them think about you while they're in the store. Where if you're not in a full end cap placement where you're super visible in a store, it can be pretty hard. As you can imagine, you know what a Walmart is like, right? Like, to get someone to go in there on their weekly shop and think, you know what, I actually need to pick up that electrolyte drink, is very difficult. Um, so yeah, it's very different. I found that really what sells in retail and what gets people to buy in retail is it's really the influencer channel. It's people seeing people going to stores, showing them what aisle it's down. I mean, hyping the drink up, hyping the flavor up. Um, and I would say it's also a very different audience, right? So we really built ourselves New York and kind of East Coast, and LA and wider California. But again, when you look at 2,500 Walmart stores, 2,000 of them are across the likes of Kentucky and Kansas, and a lot of these states where the customer themselves is very different. Realistically, the person going in the store in those kind of areas is the mom of the household, or the dad of the household. So that's where we've got to really pivot from being the brand that really intrigues people in their early to mid to late 20s who love running, to it's the mum buying for their son, or for the wider family. So yeah, we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I think part of being quite a lean team as a whole is that we can make those pivots. You know what I mean? I think about previous companies um, that I've been at, and this isn't to call out any shade or anything, but like My Protein, by comparison of a startup that is Cadence, is like it's a completely different landscape when it comes to team, right? You've got 200 people in the marketing department. Like, you can't just make those kind of pivots. Like, realistically, that's a year-long rebrand. Whereas like for us, it's just like, right, Amma, like your four VAs, which are reaching out to, you know, hundreds of hundreds of micro creators who are, in their 20s, like take two of them and send them out after the mums and the dads, and you know what I mean. And it's quite easy to make that switch. Obviously, I think with the influencer channel, sorry, I'm getting a little bit deep into influencer here. There is a certain level of kind of saturation that it takes a build, but once you achieve it, you know, you start seeing signals like, you know, your Amazon search, like your Amazon branded search starts to really pop off. That's kind of your first one that you want, that you kind of get a feel that you're getting that brand awareness. You know, you'll start seeing comments in, you know, in your reviews saying like, hey, like, you know, I saw this drink on TikTok and da la la, like, so there are signs that it's working, and ultimately, like, I mean, the number one metric that matters in the retail is units per store per week, but that is really the last thing to follow everything else, really, because you know quite a lot of these audiences who are completely fresh to the brand, they need to go through that discovery period, and you know what I mean. They need to follow like the Instagram. They need to click onto a landing page. They need to explore a store locator. They need to, you know, I mean, all that stuff. They probably need to have, you know, 6 or 7 touch points with a creator to really like actually think when they're in the store, oh, I'll go and grab one of those electrolyte drinks I've seen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that because I watched Greg from Bloom. He did a video recently.
Yeah.
I think it was a podcast where he was talking about, you know, you always think that when you're trying to give your product to influencers, you want to give them
Yeah.
like a whole, this is the script we want you to say, this is like the way
Yeah.
we want to do it. And his whole philosophy is they've built an audience the way that they have, just give it to them
Yeah.
like naturally so that they can just use
Yeah.
it day to day or whatever. And it
Yeah.
goes in like authentically, and that's what sells. So
Yeah.
going through like your whole influencer channel, because you guys have got some big like marathon athlete influencers
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and you're doing micro influencers as well. So like, what's kind of worked out the best? What's the strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, they all kind of play different roles and really satisfy different buckets of what they're doing for the brand. You know, the athletes, if you look at it from an ROI perspective, it's horrible. Um, Realistically, that's just a massive, you know, social proofing. It's a massive positioning piece more than anything. You know, I think for us, like our core audience is still the person who, you know, works out anywhere between 3 and 7 times a week. It's like, you know, when they go onto the site and they see on the homepage that, you know, Tara Davis Woodall, who's Olympic gold medalist, multiple time world champion, like Alex Yee, gold medalist in triathlon, like when they just see some of those, they don't even need to know who the person is. If they say Olympian and gold medalist, like ultimately like they kind of just blindly, not blindly, but they trust it a little bit more. So yeah, there's that. And like I said, it's you know, we really started building the channel for retail, but it's kind of turned into a whole different thing now for DTC, since we've made that kind of not pivot, but like gone down that path and understanding that's where we want to really scale first. So you know, I mean, the first thing is really like you need a Discord, and you need to have a place ready to house all these micro creators, because you know you can gift out a case of cans, and you know say that gift cost, it ultimately costs the business $20, right? That's just made up number. Say it costs $20. You know, ultimately, like if that creator posts once and then you lose communication with them, you know, at best with a lot of these micros, like they're averaging about 1,000 views, 2,000 views. So on a CPM basis, obviously, again, it's not the most efficient. You know, but if you can get that creator into your Discord, I mean, you can get out 5, 6, 7 more pieces of content out of them organically. Then, you know, again, that one case of cans or that one single can that you sent them into the store to buy themselves, when you refund them $1.50, $2, it's like it works out incredibly well. And then ultimately, again, like this all kind of comes back to yeah, originally we were just ultimately getting people to post about the can in retail, and then with the pivot, we really started to push it more towards the UGC. So when we said, you know, we want to finally really start to diversify our audience, we want to start putting more video in, we want to start doing more paid partnerships, all that kind of stuff. We already had a Discord of, you know, 400 to 500 creators who are ready to go. And, you know, we just ultimately stick in a brief, like, you know, early dad brief, you know, muscle growth, sleep, whatever else. Like we stick in a brief and straight off the bat within 48 hours, we've got 10 to 20 pieces of content to throw into the Meta account. So yeah, I really think I'm really bullish on influencer just from a holistic marketing perspective. I think a Discord is genuinely like one of your best marketing assets you can really build right now. Because again, not only are you getting people to talk about you and vouch for you, if whether you do affiliate codes or not, like if that one creator can get their friends and family to buy from you, like again, it's at scale, it's an enormous amount of new customers it can be bringing in for ultimately very little cost. It's ultimately product cost. So yeah, I can't even remember the question honestly, but
you guys do so well as well with that is the flywheel that starts with like the can is so aesthetic. The branding behind it is like everybody wants to get involved in the branding, and the actual taste of the can is unbelievable. So like when you sent me a lovely care package of Cadence cans when I was in San Diego at a conference, and then also when I was living in Austin, and people would come around to mine, they'd open my fridge, they'd take it. And I reckon from that, there's probably 20 or 30 people, because my girlfriend at the time, she gave it to all of her friends, and they've all just like continued with it. So I feel like you guys do such a good job on just everything from the taste to the can to everything.
Yeah. And I think that's what enabled us to build quite quickly without really spending much money on, the paid channels. We really, when you've got a lean team, I mean, when I came on as head of marketing, it was myself pretty much handling every growth channel. We had two partnerships guys, one in the UK and one in the US, and then ultimately two guys for content, a shooter and a designer. We just found that getting really good at organic content to one, embed yourself in a community through content, become really cool. Like as gimpy as that sounds, be the brand that people want to partner with. And then ultimately a partnership always ends up being, or always has to end up being 50-50 split. So you're realistically, whatever you invest, you're at least getting that back. That's how we kind of, found ourselves growing, like I said, without much cost, but equally like getting super deep within more specifically the running community. So yeah.
Love that. And so let's go back to the subscriptions. And so obviously LTV is the most important thing that you guys are tracking on the D2C side. Yeah. So in order to get high LTV, how did you build out your subscription offer?
Yeah. It was really, again, going back to being a lean team, I found that I had to prioritize acquisition, because that's where ultimately like you're putting a lot on the line with the paid side. So that's why I invested first in the acquisition hires. I handled retention up until literally the day before yesterday. So for the first 2.5 years of Cadence, pretty much. And if retention is going to be 10% of my time, then I just need to pull the absolute biggest lever that we've got, which is getting people on subscription. A subscriber is worth, 3.2 times what a non-subscriber is worth across a year. And a one-time purchaser who then goes to a subscription following the first purchase, they're worth 5 to 6 times what a one-time purchase only customer is worth. So, I just found that really building the offer around subscription it had to be my priority. And ultimately this is where I leaned on other people. I've never been scared to connect with people and ultimately pick their brains and like be the listener in the room kind of thing. So I ultimately went to a few people in the industry and like just got on a call with them, like people who I know have built a great business very quickly, and ultimately broke down to figuring out like how to do it. I had a conversation with the guys at Keto and IQ. Same thing, like they didn't launch as a proper like D2C business. They've been a brand for a long time, but like they didn't really start scaling D2C until very recently. And I had a meeting with them, and they ultimately said, we did 8 months of testing this, and ultimately you need to get someone to month 3 or 4, past month 3 and into month 4. And once you get them to that point, you pretty much have got them for a year. So, we really built the subscription offer around that. We started off with a first order discount. You've got to make that super attractive, because ultimately you want to make it a no-brainer. I used to listen to a lot of Alex Hormozy and read a lot of Hormozy books, and one thing that always stood out to me is, make the offers so good that like they feel stupid saying no to it, and in this case, saying no to it is getting a one-time purchase or not buying. So, making that discount, getting that at the right level is really important, because you can also make it too deep quite quickly. And then ultimately after that, it was testing gifts on month 2 and month 3. I found that gifts are, especially when you're getting gifts at scale, when you're just, ordering merch and things like that, giving merch can often be cheaper than, giving a greater discount. So month 2 and month 3 onwards, like we're coming back down to like 15%, which is quite a shallow discount, really. You see 20, 25 out there quite a lot. But, giving a bottle where the cogs are, extremely affordable for the brand, or a towel where the same thing, it's very affordable for the brand, like giving that away it can be cheaper for you than, giving away an extra 5 or 10% in some cases. But yeah, I mean, the main difference maker, I'd say, like, and we always knew this would be the case, was the cap. So we added the cap into the first order, free. And we did that for Black Friday last year, and then it was so good that, we reintroduced it in January and have ran it ever since. And, there's a few things going on here. Firstly, we had members of the team, we had Ross, we had our athletes wearing that cap for like a good year before we even made it public. And even now, you can't come to the website and buy the cap. The only way to get the cap is with a subscription. So we really built up the hype for the cap and just made people really want that. And, at first there was an element of, I'm sure, people just buying to buy the cap, but then ultimately they stay because of the infrastructure and the product. And the second thing was, when you think about our product, unless it's a group outside with a can and they're drinking it, like, again, as a kind of a group function, most people take the supplements either at home or at the gym in their locker, kind of thing. I mean, our electrolyte sachets, realistically, most people will mix them, at home before they go to the gym, at home before they go on a run. They'll maybe have it in a bottle, a Cadence bottle with a pretty small logo on. And, I really just looked back at my time at Represent, which, really blew up as soon as they started launching the Owners Club, which is, the big obvious logo on the back of the hoodie, on the back of the t-shirt. And I realized quite quickly I needed to get our logo on people. So, ultimately it kind of does a few things there. One, it gets more people to subscribe to you, but two, it also increases brand awareness, because again, people are out and about and they're seeing the cap. Like, I leave my flat. I can guarantee if I went for a 10K run today and tomorrow, I'd see a Cadence cap at least once across those 2 runs. And, it's maybe it's just a me thing with me being an internal like team member, but knowing that person subscribed to Cadence at one point in their life, like, it's a cool feeling. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, dude, my girlfriend at the time in Austin used to give off to me all the time, because I used to text you all the time with it too. I'd see somebody in the sauna with a Cadence can, and I'd immediately just like, oh, how do you know about Cadence? Like, start talking to them. I used to do run clubs as well. I think it was December time, so it must have been after Black Friday, where I seen people wearing the hats and everything as well. So yeah, 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and there's a few more levers you can pull. Like there's some that we're working on right now. Like a big one we want to start doing more of is driving trial, especially into other flavors. If we look at sachets as the ultimate D2C product that we've got, lower cogs, light on shipping, daily product. The best thing that we can do is get people to trial the products, because then, if they come to cancel their subscription, the most direct deflection is like, hey, have you tried this other one? You know what I mean? Or get them to actively think about swapping before they're even considering canceling. So yeah, we'll be doing some stuff kind of around that philosophy really over the next couple of weeks. So we'll be launching some stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. And okay, so you've mentioned lean team quite a few times. So bring us through kind of what the team looks like. And you mentioned to me yesterday as well that you're going through a few structural changes at the minute. What are those changes that you've made?
Yeah, so I mean, if I start from the beginning, I guess like like I said, prior to I'd say November 25, like the team really was myself overseeing everything marketing, ecom, retail marketing, but really in the weeds, hands on keys with growth. And then, like I said, we had a couple of content guys, a couple of partnerships guys. The priority has been building out the growth team. So ultimately, like I said, we've got paid built out now. We've got influencer built out now. As of yesterday, we've got retention built out, and then brand. Obviously, we've got partnerships, activation, social, and like general content, like in that bucket. What I found was that previous to kind of a couple of weeks ago, our organization within the marketing team was very flat, and I had my hands in everything, which means, if you've got your hands in everything, it's one, a lot of people to manage, two, it's a lot of things to think about, and three, it's a lot of time on calls. So, like I said, when we think about what is the fastest way of growing our business, really it's, it is in the growth side. So one of the things I've done is we've made it a little bit more vertical. So Herc, who, really before managed activations, like specialty sales, that kind of thing, I brought him into a head of brand role. So still sits kind of within my remit, but like he just owns like, content, social activation, and he ultimately has the brand team built around that, which means, now for me, that's one touch point a week instead of, really 5 or 6 hours on calls and, constantly having to approve things, check things, being those kind of first brainstorm meetings and kind of see everything all the way through. Like, so now that's one touch point on brand, and then, really focusing a lot more of my time in growth. And, like I said, I mean, that channel, the growth side in of itself is, like I said, it's growing quite quickly as a team. I think, one thing that you need to really think about when opening a channel, and this is ultimately why we did leave paid so kind of late to bring on, despite it being such a big lever, is that if you want to scale the hell out of a channel, you really need to be ready to invest in the infrastructural team around it. Whether that is completely internal or whether you're using offshore staff or outsourcing to an agency, you're going to be eating a pretty big cost either way. We decided to build internally using, or utilizing offshore staff. So, we've got now got a couple of designers within that team. We've got a video editor, we've now got a creative strategist, and Jack oversees that. Same thing in influencer. We started off with just Amma, and this is one thing I want to make sure of when I'm hiring as well. Is like these people really need to be able to do the things on their own first before they get access to a team. Like I want to see that they can manage the channel before they're managing people managing the channel, and executing. So, Amma started like an influencer, and his job for, it really only a couple of weeks was all day, every day, messaging people and outreach. Then we added one VA, he could manage that. We added two VAs, we could manage that. And now we're on 4 VAs, I believe. And then, yeah, like, I mean, I guess when we think about the other things we brought in, like I said, retention was a very late hire, I think. But like I said, we've been really hitting our retention with a sledgehammer by just getting our subscription attached super high. So we sit at a 78% subscription at checkout rate currently, which does a lot of the work for you. So now it's like bringing Campbell in on retention, like I said, absolute killer, like comes from one of the most prevalent growth agencies in the US. He's, managed accounts. I don't know if I can say what accounts he's managing, but like, he's managed some big high scale accounts more recently. I just need him to come in and just get like ultra obsessed with like one or two metrics, which are, like I said, again, the biggest levers. So for us, that's month one subscription retention. So like it goes from, instead of thinking about every customer and trying to get every customer to stay as long as possible, we're really just funneling all customers down like one path ultimately, and that is subscription. And then ultimately he just needs to really focus on month 0 to month 1, getting as many people to stay on as possible, and ultimately he knows how to do that. So yeah, again, sorry I'm rambling a bit, but
It's perfect. And okay, so if we go back to Jack, the guy who's handling everything paid media,
yeah,
you hired him 2 weeks before Black Friday, right?
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
how did he how did he handle getting thrown into the deep end? Like surely that's probably one of your biggest days.
Yeah, and he honestly, the account, I'd say, transformed overnight. I think there's certain roles, there's certain roles that require a different, not a different kind of person, a certain type of person. I think ultimately in a role like that, you need someone who's used to building systems. So a creative system, just to have a constant pipeline of creators coming in, a media buying system where ultimately it's not automated, but you give yourself guardrails under which to run the media buying. And like I said, it needs to be someone who thinks that way. And I think honestly, like one of the one of the benefits that Jack's got is the fact that he's come from a purely agency background. So he's used to having to manage so many things at once. And ultimately when you take someone like that and get them focused on one thing, you find they adapt very quickly. Like I said, he's got a whole team under him in paid, and I wasn't involved in the hiring of any of those people. He came into the channel and just knew exactly what he needed to do. We saw a bottleneck quite quickly that design was an issue, and like design speed was an issue. Um, so you've just got to find those bottlenecks fast and address those big ones, which open up a whole new lot of headroom for you to grow. So yeah, I think even today, like I look back and I think, yes, he transformed the account and ultimately how we scaled the business, but like still, like back then when we hired him, we were still ultra narrowly focused on brand and like ultra narrowly focused on a certain type of person that's our customer. So I'd say honestly, for the past 7 or 8 months, nobody's really seen the level of scale that we can really achieve because, ultimately I enforced it upon Jack to, we are the runners brand. We are the person who cares about performance. We are the person who trains 4 to 5 times a week, doesn't drink, can't run the hangover angle. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And like I said, we went super deep and narrow into that because there was opportunity there. There is a sizable TAM for a brand that's only, a year old there. And ultimately, they're still our highest LTV customers. You know, they're the kind of people that come on the website and buy everything. Um, so it was a massive opportunity for us to, yeah, just really hyper focus there. But now, ultimately, I've given them a lot more free reign because to get to 100 million, we're going to have to take a step back and a kind of a look outwards. Like I said, one of the key things that we need to be able to do is spend more money, right? And the easiest way to spend more money is to tap into a new audience. Achieve net new reach with every dollar that you spend. So now we're really going through a period of diversification. Ultimately, Meta does a very good job of finding the right audiences. If you've got the right creative, they're very good at finding the right audiences if you've got the right creative. So that was one of the reasons why I brought a creative strategist on board, for example, someone who can, their job is exclusively thinking like, how do I tap into the psychology of this audience that's never seen Cadence before? You can say this product is for Pilates girls, but like that's not going to sell to a Pilates girl, especially when I look at how we do things and how we've done things previous, where ultimately everyone's going to a PDP and not necessarily a congruent landing page. It's like you better make sure the ad's really fucking good. So when we think about the creative and get into that psychology, we don't necessarily think about the wrapper of that audience in terms of saying this is for this person. You've got to think about relatable problems, relatable relatable things that they can relatable things that they can relate to. Scratch that. You've got to really think about those layers underneath and what is going to agitate a pain point with that specific person. Then you can present your product as a solution. So yeah, I mean, like I said, right now is that's really the main focus of the account, and we are taking more steps. You might have seen on my Twitter, I advertised for a creative agency about a week and a half ago. I don't know if you saw that, but my DMs have been now. Now I put on X. Essentially, we're looking for a creative agency to help us diversify, grow, scale with more content and new content. Um, all you have to do is submit your creative, and we'll run it. And whoever's runs the best, like ultimately gets the job. So we ended up with like I said, about 200 people in my DMs, about probably 100 people send us ads, about 50 people posted ads on Twitter. Um, so yeah, anyway, so yeah, like I said, that's really the main focus of that channel now. It's diversification ultimately.
I want to dive into kind of the culture of at Cadence. So again, we helped you guys find Jack,
Yeah,
and going through the whole strategy of like what you were after, and not
yeah,
even just the experience, but like the kind of actual person that you wanted.
yeah,
You were like, we don't want somebody that's like they just want to chill 9 to 5. We need somebody that,
yeah,
if something goes wrong, they can jump on it straight away. You've messaged
yeah,
me that you've had the team like openly come on at like 2 a.m. because they're still
yeah,
working because they're obsessed with what they're doing. So
yeah.
bring us through, like, first of all, how that culture was built and how you like really protect it when you're going through
Mhm.
hiring.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it really it comes from the top first and foremost. So honestly, like Ross is probably the most relentless founder you're really going to find. Um, in if not the most, he's up there with them. And ultimately with him, like everything from day one came down to speed. Like, and I think because I'd always been used to working a full-time job and multiple freelance jobs, and working a weekend, working late at night, like the prospects of just taking on another thing, like at all hours, like excited me, especially in this. So I'd say like ultimately, like I said, Ross, it comes from Ross. Ross brought over his first couple of hires from his previous company where he'd already embedded that culture. So you're looking at your leadership there. Really, all have that. I'd say I have that just because, like I said, I am obsessed. Like if I'm not working, I'm either eating or listening to a podcast related to DTC growth. Um, I'll openly say that I work 18 hours a day most days. Part of that is down to geography. I have team members anywhere from Leeds in the UK all the way over to LA, and that's just within my team. So I've got to be available for them, and I think it does work in my favor, the fact that I kind of see it as that just opens up my day so much more to one, get a load of shit done, especially in the morning, and then um so I'm going super off track here. That allows me to get loads of stuff done in the morning, and then like late at night, like that's when I'm on the calls with one to one with team members. I think a lot of them see that, and like ultimately they see everyone else in the business like that, and like they're happy to also be like that. I think really it does come down to who you're hiring, and you know I think when you look at the kind of culture that people come from and business sides, there is a direct correlation in that. So, when I look at someone's CV, I'm not so much impressed by someone who's, done the last year or two at a business that's worth $1 billion and has been worth $1 billion for the past 5 years, because ultimately, like, they're not in that culture of scale. They're in the culture of, a 3% lift year on year is like positive growth. Like, I need someone who's seen what zero looks like and has seen what greatness looks like within a very short space of time, because realistically, that's when you're getting the most up to date knowledge and skill set on, you know, scaling brands very quickly. And I think ultimately, if you get someone who comes from that culture of scaling brands very quickly, you get someone who's obsessed. Because you can't survive without the obsession to it. So yeah, and I've made mistakes in the past with the hiring. One in particular comes to mind where I went for the CV over the grit, I had two guys in kind of the top two. I'll openly say it. It was in the influencer channel. And, like I said, we were about to enter big retail. I had one guy who had, you know, a load of experience at, the world's biggest beverage brands currently, or I guess the US's biggest beverage brands. He really sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And like I said, he sat back a lot on like, this is what we did here and this is what we did here. And then, on the other side, I had the guy who told me he will sit there and he will send 500 cold DMs a day if it gets us what we want. Yeah, and I went for the guy with the CV rather than the guy who said because both were scalers, both were from businesses. Like you wouldn't make it to the top two unless you're a scaler. But like that was kind of a difference maker. There was like the big brand CV or the the big-ish brand CV, but like ultimately he's just a fucking executor operator type person. Um, so yeah, again, I've kind of forgotten where the question was, but
answered it perfectly. Dude, we see it all the time. People go into we call it like the CV halo effect, where they see these big brand names or these like familiar names. It's like, oh, these are like the trophy names. This is what we want to go after. But they've literally what you said, they've been at the top for however long it is. So it's like there's people haven't actually gone in and built it. They've just sat in like, no insult to them, but they've sat in a job where we call them like tick box activity. They just have to tick a few boxes and that's it. And again, it's why we tried like basically never to look at CVs. But you mentioned Ross, right? Ross is like he's genuinely one of my favorite. Him and Greg are like my favorite people to watch because they're just absolute killers. I texted you, I watched that open residency podcast that he was on. It's one of my favorite podcasts. I must have sent it to like 20 of my friends to listen to as well. But what's it like working with somebody like that day to day? Like the actual mentorship abilities, like everything. Like it must be great to have somebody on your side.
Yeah. There's a few points here. Obviously I mentioned it before, but like the first thing is he really sets a standard for pace and speed and execution. And like I said, that just funnels down to everything. And, for me, that's my person to look up to. And like, so then I've got to hold that standard and then I hold that standard so that my team can hold that standard as well. I'd say the biggest thing that Ross has done for me is connect me with people. I kind of mentioned it earlier, like I'm the kind of person anyway who's not scared to ask for advice or ask for help. Or, before I kind of entered this business, I was the guy who was putting on meetups in the flipping in Manchester, all that kind of stuff, just so I can like connect with people and like really pick people's brains on things, like if not at the event, then after. So yeah, I mean, like Ross has an extraordinary network. Like from his previous business, he raised a lot of money from a lot of people, which ultimately gets you a lot of connections. And if there's not a door that he already has open, and there is a door that he can open for people who for people to connect with me, like I said, he's introduced me to an enormous amount of people that I've learned a lot of stuff from, and in turn those people have also become mentors in very specific things. Like Ross, like I said, he's from a retail background. When we think about scaling D2C, he's not going to be my mentor for D2C growth. You know what I mean? You look at another business like Groons, for example, where from day one, like the founder of Groons, he was, an investor at a lot of D2C high growth brands. He was on the board of a lot of these brands. And like, he went into that business knowing he wanted to scale this on a subscription based CAC to LTV model. He knew he knew going into it, what he wanted his ratio to be. He knew he wanted to build that. Like Ross, like that is not his wheelhouse. Like the best thing he can do is to connect me to people whose wheelhouse it is. And I think in some ways that's been better for me because I don't just look to Ross for everything. I look to people who are really good at one specific thing. Like, for example, one of my mentors right now, as much as he's teaching me about D2C growth, a lot of it is just like how to be a great head of marketing. and how to be a great like potential future CMO type, position. Um, so yeah, like I said, that's probably the best thing he's afforded me.
And okay, so if we go into a bit more about Cadence, right? You've mentioned
Yeah.
several times to me that the electrolyte companies out there that think that you're their competitors, they're not.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
are trying to beat those legacy brands like Gatorade and get on the shelves beside them, because there's no electrolytes on
Yeah.
those shelves beside a Coca-Cola, beside a Gatorade. So yeah, if
Yeah.
this all works out, what does Cadence look like in 5?
Yeah. Like I said, we're going down a D2C path now, but that D2C path it's almost like D2C walk so retail can run. Um, you know, realistically, the 80% of the business being D2C will be, for the next 2 years. And then that's ultimately where we'll be able to make that very fast pivot to, mass global wholesale and retail. You don't see many, first thing, you don't see many brands selling cans online unless you're talking Amazon, and Amazon's not a very profitable channel. So like, it's really a volume game on Amazon. They're not a D2C product at all. Electrolyte sachets are a D2C product. There's not really an electrolyte sachet brand out there doing, obviously there's a lot doing a significant amount of money, but like the time is open, but not everyone's in the market for electrolyte sachets. Everyone's in the market for a beverage. So yeah, I mean, like when I think about the brand, going past 100 million to 300, 400 million, I just think about like these massive industries that we've got, namely sports drinks, so likes of Gatorade, energy drinks like Monster, Red Bull, energy drinks on its own is a $94 billion market. And then the water market as well. I think water, I don't even want to think about how much that is worth. If I just think about taking like a little pocket of market share from each of these, massive wide open beverage categories, like, we've got a $500 million a year business. Like, you take 0.5% from energy drinks, you've got a, $450 million business. So yeah, that's ultimately like where we go. Like I said, we really right now are focusing on, we're the better for you choice against Gatorade, purely because you look at the way things have gone over the past kind of 5 years in beverage. It started with, Poppy, Olipop coming along. They take better for you soda. You go into a 7-Eleven now in the US, you see maybe 3 to 5 Coke cans. You'll see 2 shelves worth of Poppy and Olipop. Then came along, the likes of Bloom, Alani Nu in energy. They really went on. I think the thing with energy is like the energy drink market was very male dominated, and they saw the opening for not just better for you, but really appealing to the female demographic. It's like that was their way in through their marketing. And they, again, same thing. You go into a 7-Eleven, you might see 5 different flavors of Red Bull. Same thing. You see 2 shelves and an end cap of Bloom. So really the sports drink, so Gatorade, like that's what's really been untouched. You go into Target, you will see a whole half aisle dedicated to Gatorade. It is so overwhelmingly big. And yeah, there's just so much that we can point out against that brand. Ultimately it's a formula that's been built on, 70-year-old science. It's very high sugar. It's got artificial dyes in it, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, like all that stuff that people are moving less towards and moving away from. So that's really our opportunity to come in and, ultimately we have more electrolytes, more hydration. Got zero sugar, zero artificial colors, sweetness, flavors, anything else. And I actually think, the goal of the drink as well was that it's still got to taste like a soda, which I think is like one thing that we've nailed. Like you don't want it to taste like a sports drink or even an energy drink. You want it to taste like a Coke replacement. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Dude, even the thought that, because I used to slam like Powerades and Gatorades
Yeah.
all the time, thinking it was healthy for you if I was like doing sports or training, but
Yeah.
like thinking back at now, like realizing how much crap is in them, actually, like it kind of
Yeah.
frustrates me a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny, like, obviously like in quite a lot of instances when you're training, like you need the sugar and like you need that, but like, 80% of sports drinks are drank outside of sport. You know, I remember being in New York when I went in March and I went into a food hall, and the number of people that sat there, eating dumplings, eating the burrito, like eating whatever, and they sat there with a 52-gram sugar like Gatorade, like you know what I mean. So yeah, we're there to replace that as much as the post sweat ultimately.
Okay, my last question for you, Matty, is you've been at Cadence, head of marketing for like 2 years. You guys have like grown exponentially.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned at your time at Cadence?
Hire people that either sell cans or save money. Like, you know, we've had people who don't do either of those things, and ultimately what you end up with is someone who spends money and doesn't make any money. And I actually first got the whole A player, B player, C player like thought infrastructure from you. Like I remember years ago hearing you talk about that, and like having those A players in your team it's so important, especially when you're in a role like the head of marketing where you have done everything. Like you've done every role there is to do, like the ins and outs of it, and you're bringing someone in and you just want someone who's reliable as hell, and you can really just trust them to like own and run a channel and build the channel. So for that you really need A players. So yeah, really would be that.
Absolutely. And there's nothing more unmotivating than being on a team with B and C players if you're just trying to build an A player team.
Yeah.
I love it, Matty. I love it. Right. We are going to do another podcast come, what is it, November 2027, when you've hit the 100 million run rate. And we're going to go through the whole wins. And I think the next goal will probably be 1 billion run rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited.
Awesome. Matty, thank you so much. I'll put all the links to all your socials if anybody wants to follow along below in the show notes. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're an agency owner that is wanting to scale and wants to continue bringing your business to new heights and doesn't want to put everything on pause for hiring and finding the best talent that's out there in SEO and paid media, well, that's something I can help with. I own a recruitment company that has specialized in both the SEO and paid media sector, and we work with 100 plus businesses. So I'm going to leave 2 links below. There's no big pitch here, but if you want to talk over strategy and hiring and how myself and my team can find you the best A player talent in both the SEO and paid media sector, then please book in, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.